Hello, welcome to another edition of Serial Viewers. Pride Month.
Yeah.
You sound so enthusiastic.
I am. I was doing it like I was actually a BBC kind of host.
I mean, there's BBC enthusiasm and real enthusiasm.
Well, okay. Well, welcome anyway. And I'm joined today by my lovely fellow presenters.
Oh, I like
Toby.
that, lovely.
I am Toby. That's right, I am Toby.
Alex.
I'm Alex, for once. I'm Alex.
Yes.
Hey.
Not for much longer, though, if I have anything to fucking say about
All
it.
right,
Jesus, the
calm down.
animosity from
yeah,
you
what's
today.
up your ass,
Well, this
man?
is actually in perfect keeping because you are very much like a character in the film we're about to discuss.
What, Bernadette?
Felicia.
Oh, okay.
We're here to talk about none other than my personal favourite gem of a movie, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Is it Adventures of?
The Adventures of,
They
yes.
do go on one or two adventures.
Yeah, no, the full got to be the full title,
I've
mate,
always
yeah.
had it as Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Because the show is just Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. So
that
likewise,
what it is?
yeah. But most people just call it Priscilla, you know.
Right, yeah, no,
Yeah.
until they, Coppola did that Presley film,
Oh, Priscilla.
which is
yeah.
just Priscilla.
Right. Yeah,
So
you're
now
right.
that makes it really confusing. But we know which one is the better film. Now, gentlemen, yeah, I'm saying that. Fuck it.
Okay.
Stefan Elliott's 1994 classic is way better than anything Sofia Coppola can make. Ooh. I quite like Lost in
We're going to
Translation.
get her on an episode, bro. I know where
the claws
you know
are
what I mean?
out.
I quite like, well, it's because this film's very catty. So I've decided to like
get
get
claws
into
out.
character.
Adopt it.
Yeah. No,
like that.
I really like Lost in Translation as well. It's a good film.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
But nonetheless, what are your thoughts?
I'm surprised at how much I've vibed with this fucking movie, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I am and I'm not, because I knew it was just a bunch of drag queens in the desert. Well, 2 drag queens and a transgender woman.
Yes.
Going through the desert, listening to a bunch of, you know, I mean, a lot of the gay scene, it's all about disco and dance music, which is right up my street. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I knew that at the very least I'd enjoy the soundtrack. And I am a fan of everyone else's previous work. Terrence Stamp is General Zod.
We like ABBA, right?
We like ABBA. Hugo Weaving is Elrond.
Well, it's
Guy
interesting
Pearce is in Iron Man 3, but we won't talk about that.
But this is Guy Pearce before everything.
This is his breakout role.
Because
Yeah.
he was in Neighbours
Neighbours, yeah.
before this.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the final song was actually going to be a Kylie Minogue song.
It was,
originally.
yeah.
So what happened?
I didn't actually read into it much. It's a lot of these things where you look at like a lot of the original casting where they were going to have Tony Curtis.
Tony Curtis was the first choice for Bernadette. Obviously, Some Like It Hot being an influence there.
Yeah, then there was John Cleese at one point.
John Cleese
was
talks about,
Tied up
thrown about.
for Bernadette.
Tim Curry was briefly considered.
Yes, and then Tim Curry was the one that suggested someone else.
Oh, was
Passed
it?
the script over. I think it was Curry who had actually passed it over to Stamp.
Okay.
Or had thrown the name into a hat.
Why don't you try this guy? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is the kind of jewel of the film.
Is his
Terrence
performance.
Stamp's performance.
Yeah, he steals the show for me in so many different
Right,
ways.
all I'm saying, yeah, is that my man was
all
nominated
you're
for...
saying?
I mean, it can be if you want it to be.
Sometimes
I can remain mute. But no, I have a point to make, bro. You see, Terrence Stamp got the Golden Globe. He got the BAFTA. He was snubbed by the Academy on the basis of pure fucking homophobia, man. I'm telling you now. The Academy nowadays, if they made a film like that, lap it up, mate, lap it up. But these are the same people that in 94 snubbed my man Terrence.
Well,
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
apparently he was quite anxious to play the role before he later on agreed to it because of all of the previous roles he would played. And he was a certain type of actor, but then he actually came around and thought, you know what, let me go a little bit out into Pandora's box. Let me, you know,
Get out
kind
of
of
my
change,
comfort zone,
change
yeah.
my palette a little bit. And boy, did he change it. Jesus.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting that you mentioned, because the other film we've covered for Pride Month was produced by EuropaCorp, not a traditional American production house. Likewise, this is an Australian film.
Yeah.
And do you think that up until maybe at least 10, 15 years ago, the talk of a main production house trying to go for an LGBTQ plus film was unheard of?
They wouldn't touch it.
Wouldn't touch it.
They
no.
wouldn't touch it.
Is that because of religious? Or do you think that's just because of the way political things are?
No, it's political things. I mean, the religious element wasn't really used as an excuse for homophobia until about 10, 15 years ago. When I was a kid, homophobia was just because it's weird. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not the norm, you know? And I think it's funny now that nowadays they would see such a film as incredibly easy to market and profitable. But these are the same guys, mate, who back in the day wouldn't have touched this thing, man. So in a positive way, I think the world has changed. But also, don't fall for the game with these Hollywood types, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Because this film, a lot of this film was, at least the pre-production of it, was built around the Cannes Film Festival.
Sure.
So they found somebody who worked at Working Title, who did like 4 Weddings, Shaun of the Dead. And then she took it to Polygram Filmed Entertainment, who then kind of got the ball rolling on that. And then there was the disastrous pre-production casting of Rupert Everett and Jason Donovan, who apparently were just dicks to each other. And
apparently they
crew.
didn't get along well. And they were afraid of any animosity.
But this film, it really was a festival movie. It was funded through the festival circuit and promoted through the festival circuit, and it wasn't given a wide release in the US. It was kind of put on the shelf here and there. But there was a premiere party in '94, and you had like Matthew Modine, Katie Lang, a photograph going in. So like people knew about it, but it was kind of swept under the rug.
Would you guys say that this is? I'm not saying it is. I'm just asking a question off the bat. Would you guys say this is regarded as a cult film?
Oh, massively!
Absolutely.
You wouldn't have the stage show if not for that fact. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd actually say this is probably one of those that actually banked on DVD sales later. Because it's one of those where anyone who's not just within the community, I'd say there's also people who are just into general musical theatre. But then you've also got this whole audience of these middle-aged men who went to see it because it was just such a laugh. The whole idea of going through the outback and having all these,
just shocking people.
Culture clashes. It was so. My dad was a fan of the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And I remember these like, it's just so funny, isn't it? And I love how it crosses into so many different audiences that it creates a cult between those audiences. And it strikes me as the type of thing that, again, like I always mention, Office Space or even True Romance, where these films are then celebrated 2 or 3, 4 years later. And we were talking about performances, Terence Stamp, but the ones that I think that are actually quite handled well, Guy Pearce's one is excessively
as Adam,
catty,
he's
but
great.
it kind of almost never really crosses the line into parody.
No, I think that the most outlandish thing for me, Guy Pearce's character Adam spends most of this film looking like a Batman villain, specifically Joel Schumacher, like the Jim Carrey's Riddler kind of vibe.
Joel Schumacher himself is
was
gay.
yeah.
Was.
Rest in peace.
Yeah,
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
But no, with there is a scene which we'll come on to later in the film where his character is really grounded. And so that kind of almost fuck you attitude he has, you view it differently by the end of the film, as opposed to at the start where he literally just feels like a bitchy soap opera character almost.
So by the first part of the film, before that event takes place, which we will get onto, you kind of see him as a bit of a whiny character.
He's just beefing everybody.
You're not really on board with him.
Not to spoil, but he says at one point, I don't think this is a revealing part of the plot, but that he gets a kick out of getting a rise out of other people.
Yeah.
And that's evident before that line's even said. He's a wind-up merchant.
He is.
And
especially to Bernadette.
Yeah,
especially to Bernadette.
Even with the whole Bernie. And
so there's something called, I believe it's dead naming, which is when you refer to a transgender person by the name that they had before their transition, if they did change it.
Sure.
And nowadays, man, in a lot of circles, it's viewed upon as like really like no-go. And Guy Pearce is just flushed it around.
There was actually for quite a long time until, we had a collective of LGBTQ.
The explosion of the
There was a lot of
2010s.
animosity between actual trans and gay lesbians.
Oh, really?
And even between gays and lesbians, there's been this kind of, there's been a lot of animosity between them.
Damn,
it's only in kind of the recent era where this has all become a collective and more support because they realise that they are all kind of almost fighting the same
battle.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing that this film kind of portrays that with the kind of simmering tension at certain times between Bernadette and Adam.
Well, that makes more sense now because it's honest in that regard, I suppose.
Yeah, so...
No, definitely. And it's interesting that they are all very different. The one that I think is the most complex character in a different light is Hugo Weaving.
Tick, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Where Tick has the whole thing of, it's interesting as it's revealed later, but Tick has a lot going on which is actually subtle, it's nuanced, it's hidden behind the performance, and it's not played up for laughs so much.
No.
Yeah.
And also Tick is the one that's in the middle of, it's the middle ground between the
He's the lukewarm
the
water.
bitchiness that's going on throughout it.
Yeah.
And it's more as it goes on that this all starts to get explained a lot more. So Stefan Elliott, who directed it, Stefan.
But spelled differently.
PH.
Stefan.
Yeah, Stefan or whatever.
Stefan, probably.
Well,
Probably more like a Stefan.
I don't
Stefan?
know.
It's not my name, you know what I mean? I can't tell him.
And it never will be. Remember that.
All right. Sorry,
Right.
mate.
Is an openly gay man.
Yes.
Well, now he is.
Yeah. I mean, but you can see where I'm guessing the dialogue and all of the energy and everything behind it, and obviously a real fondness for drag was probably there all along.
Yeah. Well, the hotel that they do the performances at, the Imperial Hotel, I believe, in Sydney, that was hosting drag shows in '83, and it's like a hotspot for the LGBTQ.
Sydney's always been openly known as one of the gay capitals of the world.
And well, they're actually a group known as, I know it's mentioned in the film,
Lay
but
Girls.
the Lay Girls, yeah.
Is that a
there
real
was an
thing?
actual
I
real
would
group.
not be surprised.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the parts of it I haven't really read up into too much.
Yeah.
I've kind of got a deeper understanding of the actual narrative and what's going on, and some of the themes and stuff that's going on, which I feel like we can only explore when we all start getting into spoilers. But did I ask you at all, what was your initial reaction to the way in which the film handles comedy primarily over everything else?
Well, the characters have, and I have said fuck you in the past, as recently as 5 minutes ago, but they do have this kind of fuck you attitude. That we are who we are, and we're going to go through, we're going around, and almost you end up being a statement without really making one, and the film that it kind of reminded me of the most, actually, was something like Easy Rider.
Okay.
Where they're outsiders,
Anti-establishment.
yeah, going around and just being who they are and just being
Fighting against
opposed
the
for,
system
all they had
almost,
to, whereas all they're doing is just existing.
Yeah.
But then when you have the more comedic elements, that is, like, for example, when they come across almost pretty violent adversity. Do you guys ever see that show Sex Education on Netflix?
No.
Right,
Yeah.
very brief comparison. There's a scene in which Eric, played by Ncuti Gatwa, who's now Doctor Who, thank God.
Right.
He goes on a night out in drag, and on the way back home, he's found by some guys and beaten up.
Right.
And I kind of thought, wouldn't it be nice to see just people fight back against all this bullshit bigotry, against all this oppression?
Well, because I'm guessing most of the time there isn't.
Yeah, and this film, you really get it. Is like when people try it with them, they get it back. Do you know what I mean? It's like Django Unchained would be really depressing if it didn't have the revenge element at the end. It would just be 2 hours of slaves getting beaten up.
I think
Do
a
you know
lot
what I
of
mean?
that comes down to the camaraderie of the group, though. I mean, as they're kind of going on this journey, this exploration to kind of, get to their destination and succeed where they want to succeed, they actually do grow as a unit.
Well,
And
a team.
each one has the other one's back, and that's something that was obviously portrayed in that sequence that you're speaking about, and it kind of tugged at your heart a bit and made it feel, very warming almost.
I knew you guys were going to go for that one in particular, but what I was actually also kind of deviating towards when I asked that question was the other scenes where there are darker moments with flashbacks.
Yes. That scene.
right.
I know, and there's also a Christmas one as well.
I had a
regarding
big
some
chuckle
toys.
at that.
But you know how where that whole scene is set up, it could have been very like.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
This film does that not just one or two times. It does it repeatedly. It will go for the right. Here's the thing, and it makes the audience go, "Oh, where's this going to go?" And then it goes, "Actually, but it still says what it's trying to say, but injects a bit of humour in just before."
Yeah.
And that's probably a nice comparison between the two films, where balancing heavy themes with levity.
Yeah, whereas nowadays you'd have to have it follow through and then a sequence afterwards where they say, this is a very bad thing. Oh, it's very, meandering. It's like, well...
Yeah, we say that's mentioned the theme of suffering.
Yes, exactly.
There's no kind of, you can't find joy when in a lot of bad situations the best thing is to almost pick yourself up and carry on. And in some situations, obviously it's a lot far greater, but there's some where you can even pick yourself up and put a smile on.
And
That's
back.
definitely displayed in their actions throughout the film. Like each of them as an individual has kind of overcome their different circumstances of adversity, I guess you can say. And now they have a different outlook on the world that they're living in and how they choose to kind of navigate that world. And that's something I actually enjoyed. That's an aspect I really liked about the film as a whole. So,
spoil.
Do you want to spoil it?
Yeah, you ready?
Let's
go. Spoil.
It's a lot of ABBA.
I'm going to take my spoiler drink, which is water.
Yeah. I'm going to have a sip of water.
And then I'll be ready to spoil.
So I'll just watch you guys drink.
He's not got any water, mate. There's a bottle there.
I mean, there's water in my body, so.
Shit! All right.
Let's get.
Guys, I told you about being violent towards each other.
Yeah, we're on a sofa together. There's no black on black.
You set this up, bro.
No, technically I did.
No. All right, spoiled straight away. Get into it. So the whole theme is getting across Australia to go to perform in a casino.
Yeah.
Through the back areas. Now, when I worked and did my farm work in Australia, I can tell you that there are places like that.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing for me is always seeing hotel. So in Australia, they're not called pubs; they're called hotels.
Ah.
And there are a lot of these little areas, and you'll go to the something.
Hotel,
so there was one called the Commercial Hotel that was nearby, and I just remember thinking that's almost like calling a place the generic pub. You know, right? And it's in particular where the road trip's already began. You've established the characters, and they go into this bar, and instead of having the typical homophobic man brunt, they're met by this woman.
Butch woman.
This butch woman to begin with. And she ends up coming out with arguably the greatest Terence Stamp's character. She ends up coming out with the greatest response ever.
Perfectly delivered.
To the point where every kind of bogan farmer Australian is pissing themselves laughing.
Well, that's the little, not I said little, but from what I, as a distant, over the other side of the world observer of Australian culture, the impression I get is like, if you could give it as much as you could take, it was like, hey,
you're respected.
This guy's all right kind of thing.
But that's another moment of, that starts really dark.
Where
you don't know how unpleasant this scene. Bang, there's a bit of humour. I've diffused the situation, you know, and that's one of my favourite things. Oh,
look at that.
Look at these costumes. The costumes are like my favourite thing.
Well, Academy Award winning,
yeah, which is like a bit of a backhand when you look
know
at
what I'm saying?
Right,
there you go. Yeah,
it's kind of like going, this film's really good, we better give it summing.
Yeah. But it well deserved. I mean, the sort of costumes that they have in this are amazing.
The lizards, the emus, there's the like parachute pants scene in the desert as well. You've got
big flowing silver shit when he's on the top of the bus.
Oh, the silver slipper on the top of the bus. Yeah. No, I think that's my favourite. All those scenes just cutting away to that. And in a lot of other films, if you kind of did that repeated theme, it probably wear thin. Whereas this film knows to do it.
It knows when to do it and when and how to do it.
But this is what reminded me of Easy Rider again. There are so many, because it's a road trip film, extended sequences set to music and really utilising the surroundings and the scenescapes, whatever you call them.
Sure.
This is a good segue onto the fact that the cinematography in this film is fucking amazing, man.
It's great.
You want to know how to use CinemaScope, 235:1. This is how you frame a shot, Joss Whedon.
Especially some of the landscape sort of like shots, like where there's a sequence where Bernadine goes on a bit of an exploration.
Bernadette.
Sorry, Bernadette.
Grenadine.
Well, she can be Bernadine.
You want to get on the source, innit? That's why you talk about Grenadine.
But Bernadine goes
Bernadette.
Bernadette.
Did it again.
Jesus.
Just stop it, Toby.
What, we were talking about Stephen Fuller earlier?
Animosity.
Oh yeah, let's go back. Stephen Fuller. Yeah. However, goes on exploration, and there's certain scenes in the desert where the camera opens up and you see really wide shots of just the location as a whole. Gave me very much Lawrence of Arabia vibes as well.
It's the Odyssey.
Yeah, exactly.
They've gone to this forgotten, unknown land of mystery and
wonder,
endlessness, and it goes on, and it kind of almost feels like a bit of Greek mythology at that point.
Yeah,
almost dreamlike.
Yeah, and even with the costumes, it's also surreal that it plays into that. And that's why I find the fact that they're trapped there.
We appear to be experiencing some technical difficulties. I believe a pigeon just came through the roof.
Yeah,
and it shitted on your head.
It did.
Yeah.
Naughty pigeon!
It's gone now.
But it's a surreal factor. And then to have it interrupted by the indigenous gentleman come over and go, nice night, which is a terrific scene.
It's a lovely scene when I go back to the camp.
It's brilliant.
And that's literally turns to Jason, who came to watch it with us.
He was our
and
friend
said,
that accompanied us.
Do you know what? Being made outsiders in your own country, you could probably relate to the three unusually dressed performers in the middle of the desert.
And he joins in as well. There's a dance sequence, a dance scene where he actually joins in with them, and he is in literally bliss throughout this whole sequence.
But then bounces back to the surreal by them all suddenly being in their costumes.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, where did they get their costumes from? How
Doesn't
could they
matter.
like the
Doesn't
lighting
matter.
behind them? Where's the music coming from?
But the point you make about outsiders in your own land and being like the people that they can relate to the most, even though by today's standards, and there is an obvious racial element to it, you see the crows in Dumbo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if they are black caricatures, Boss Man is completely ostracized by his own society, and the only people that will hang out with him are other people who have been ostracized by society. So even if that shit is 80 years old and outdated, it does carry a common theme that is unfortunately representative of our society. Fuck society, man!
All right, easy.
It turned out...
Do you remember the Midas Touch by Shalimar? Is it Shalimar? Midas Touch?
Yeah, Shalimar.
Midas Touch was actually recorded by the American band Midnight Star in 1986, not Shalimar.
That's all that's missing from this film. But you go, the sequence does balance between the surreal until it gets to the two cities.
Yes.
Do you know, you start off in Sydney. It's not a city, it's the Northern Territory at the end, right? The northernest point of Australia.
Right, yeah.
And with the casino. But it's the first part of like actual civilization that
they
you
come
get.
to,
And what's interesting is a lot of it plays into a homage to another film, Australian film called Wake in Fright.
Heard of this?
Haven't seen it.
Right, I strongly recommend this. Gary Bond was also a gay actor, but in the film that's not explored. It's not got Donald Pleasance is in it.
Nice.
The idea is a man who is a school teacher in New South Wales is meant to get his plane home, stops off in a town called Bundayaba, big beer drinking mining town where they all gamble.
Bundayaba.
Yeah, like
Bundayaba.
I want to go there.
I want to go.
Could I have a coffee? Oh, you can have a beer. You know, that whole joke with Marge in The Simpsons. That's literally like Waking Fright.
Yeah.
That Waking Fright is that. And he ends up basically gambling, getting too battered and can't get back to Sydney.
Oh.
So he's trapped there and begins to live the rural, grim, plain land, outdoorsman life, the bushman experience of these lawless kind of farm beer drinking mining folk. In this film, I feel like there was a bit of
similarity.
Well,
I won't lie, very similar happened to me a couple of weeks ago, what you just said, but it was in Romford when I lost my glasses.
That happens to you most of the time.
Yeah,
Let's not
but-
lie and say it does.
But
So
Romford
you
is an interesting
gambled
place.
in Romford and what?
Well, I gambled by getting public transport at that time,
Right.
and ended up in Romford, which is a lawless place.
But were you living like a rural life for a little bit?
Did you go kangaroo hunting at any point?
You can't hunt kangaroos in this country.
No, because they don't exist here.
But what about in the zoo?
Well, duh.
Oh, but they exist in the zoo. No, fuck you. You said they don't exist. They're in the fucking zoo, man.
Zoo animals, you nut.
You'll
man.
get arrested,
You
man.
can't hunt kangaroos
You know what?
because they're in the
I
zoo.
don't like this rhino. Fuck it. Like, you can't
This
do
tiger
that.
annoys me. Boom.
I mean, Nigel Farage, if he gets into power, he might be.
No, no.
Even then, man. Even then.
Excluding that. That rare thing I hope never happens. Right. Going back to Priscilla, Bo, it's the blend is surreal and everything, but I still think there are links to other Australian cinema, like even Razorback, where they use these kind of... it's almost matte paintings. They're images that almost blend into the environment, that give a kind of dreamlike quality.
They don't seem real.
Yeah,
almost,
and I think this Wake and Fright, this obviously with that kind of previous Australian, even Mad Max, the second one in particular, that definitely has a case of that. So I feel like this film also goes, right, it is an Australian film, let's lean into that. But we're also going to have musical numbers in wacky ass costumes.
Yeah, it's a perfect blend.
They are
It's
wacky.
funny you mentioned Mad Max actually, because a little note that I discovered is that the tour bus that they use in this film was actually the same sort of tour buses that were designed and used in Mad Max Fury Road later on. The same group, same company.
I wish it was
similar.
lavender in Mad Max. That would
do
have made
I.
the film a lot better.
Trust
Sorry,
me, man.
all I'm going to say is if you still defend Fury Road after Furiosa came out, I'm going to find you, yeah? Calf at McDonald's next week, 7 p.m.
Someone might actually meet you there.
Trust me!
That's the thing.
Toby, you are such an aggressive human.
He
being.
is, isn't it?
It's unresolved childhood
It's
issues.
talking about two films that explore happiness and pride, and you've just decided to turn up here with like a pitchfork.
Dad didn't
man.
take me to see Lord of the Rings as a kid, so,
So
I'm still
that's
dealing
it.
with
That's
That's
why.
it, just
yeah.
from then.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Man,
Yeah,
my
okay.
childhood feels so much worse than yours. Speaking of troubled childhood, back to this. We're constantly playing on the theme that they all have their little flashbacks of their childhoods, right? So you've got Hugo Weaving. No, Hugo Weaving, does he actually have a flashback?
I don't think so.
Does
he?
No, not that I know of. It's Adam, Guy Pearce, that has the flashback with the uncle scene.
Oh, yeah, the
in
uncle.
bar.
And then
Where
Bernard.
he basically we're in spoilers, aren't we?
He's in a bathtub.
Sabotages his paedophile uncle by pulling the drain plug out, and his bollocks get trapped in the drain.
I loved it. I loved it.
Try to
think
say
you did.
that like as directly as possible. It's so
Well, it's
hard.
like that Law and Order clip where the woman's like, do you know that your husband was sodomized with a banana? Did you see that?
Do you think that there was a reason that the killer sodomized your husband with a banana?
I should laugh about
It's like, no, but she said it with such a straight face. I'm like, this is definitely take
Wait,
55.
Law and Order do this quite frequently because there's also a scene where Ice-T and a man are talking and he goes, I'm not gay. I have relationships with women and sex with men. And Ice-T just goes,
That means you're gay.
in the most like, and then the music does a dramatic sting. It goes, doo doo. And what is it with Law and Order? What's going on with Law
I'm
and
trying to
Order?
get around the fact that Ice-T was in Law
Yeah,
and Order.
Ice-T
Right,
was in
Special
Law and
Victims
Order.
Unit.
Yeah. Anyway, they have the flashbacks where the paedophile uncle gets his balls caught in the drain. Then you have the one with Terrence Stamps.
Unwrapping.
Yeah. Swapping the labels on the presents.
And opening his sister's.
She gets her sister's presents, but back then, that's the boy.
Brilliant gag.
Yeah,
I won't lie, my sister, when she was 5, she got this really cool VTech toy, and I nearly stole it, so I relate to that, because
Well,
it was
did
like
she-
a multimedia thing.
I would have loved a cement mixer as a kid. That was the coolest present.
But you
ever.
naturally just eat the cement.
No.
But how old are we talking?
A toy cement mixer is what's given as
Then
a
what
toy.
do you put in the toy cement mixer?
I
Just
don't
like-
know.
No, a drink.
It's just a
Like,
toy. You go.
some juice.
Oh, you
like-
pretend there's cement.
Yeah.
That's bollocks.
Yeah,
That's
man.
bollocks. Just get a bucket, man. You could do something with a bucket, but like, oh, it's a cement mixer.
Toby,
Imagination.
Toby, you had a very strange childhood. where
I
you
had toy lightsabers, mate.
weren't-
That's what I had.
you weren't allowed to play. You weren't allowed to see Lord of the Rings, and you ate cement,
No, I asked if you were eating cement.
which would only come from the fact that you thought eating cement was part of
I
it.
bet you smelt glue when you were younger as well.
No, I wasn't that
Oh,
adventurous.
you weren't that child?
No, I didn't
He
even
just
realise.
ate a pot of copy decks, and it just ruined his mind.
Funny enough, you know the kid that played Baby Superman in the original film? Yeah, he died
yeah.
sniffing glue.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's a bit sad.
Yeah, just an upbeat moment.
All
But
right,
you got those flashbacks. But then the integral one is that Hugo Weaving was married.
Yes, he was.
Is he not
Tick is-
anymore? Oh no, sorry, in the film.
Yeah.
he
You went up. That's how much the glue fried.
I was
you.
thinking about Samara.
The Tick,
The
which
Tick.
is a terrible show on Amazon Prime.
The cartoon was alright.
Don't watch it.
But Tick's got the whole thing where it's revealed, and then there's this real silence where, next thing you tell us you have a kid, and I'm like, that's the only part of the film where I went, that silence to me would have been like, no, really?
You're joking, right?
Yeah, you're joking, right? But then there's the reveal to the point where Bernadette faints, which I think is quite funny.
Yeah.
But then there's another surreal moment.
The
where-
hospital scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite funny though.
Yeah, what was going on with that?
So
I get it.
it's emblematic of his own fear and anxiety over the fact that this is who he is, and then he's in that very heteronormative environment of it's a girl, and yet he's there in his
and
glam
then proceeds to light a cigar.
But it's also a blend of probably what the actual experience of waiting for the confirmation of a child. Because what you kind of instigate from the whole thing is, she's a lesbian, his wife.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
gay. She wanted a child. They were very close. So he did it. He helped her, have a kid.
He helped her fulfill what
But
she
he's
wanted,
always
yeah.
been worried because the typical kind of stereotype of roles of men and women.
The nuclear
which,
family,
the nuclear family idea, and also Australia, think about it, it's an extremely conservative country.
Very much
was
so,
the
yeah.
idea that they were, only, a man has to be a man and a woman is a Sheila. And it's
Specifically
like,
a Sheila.
well, my son will never put up with this. And in fact, that's my favourite wholesome old thing.
Me too.
The son is basically a Gen Z. Like extremely progressive.
Yeah.
Almost feels like taken from modern day as
Ripped
opposed
out,
to
yeah,
94.
I get you. I also think he's so, you can view it from the innocence of childhood. I think he's so happy to just have his parent in his life, his father. It doesn't matter what, because when he asks you about when you go home, you're going to have a boyfriend? And he's kind of like, maybe. He's like, nah, I hope you do kind of vibe. It's like, he's just so happy that Tick is there in his life. This is who he is, and he's ready to accept him regardless.
I'd even go further,
Oh.
where children do not actually. So I'll give you a prime example of a story. Okay? When I was a boy, I turned to my mum, I was probably about year 8, and I turned to my mum and I went, Matt this, my friend Matt, Matt's great, Matt's funny, he likes this, Matt likes that. Oh, can Matt come round for dinner on Friday after school? My mum went, yeah, of course. My mum opened the door and Matt was black. But at no point did it occur to me as a 13-year-old to mention that
No, it
Matt was
wouldn't.
black.
No, it wouldn't,
and that's
man.
the thing where kids don't really see things.
Innocence.
There's no
Innocence. It's the innocence there.
Yeah, they don't have any kind of prejudice. They just kind of see people for what they are.
Yeah.
And
It's when you
I
go
feel that
into-
leans into it.
It's
quite
when you go
much.
into the real world of adulthood and people start telling you what you should and shouldn't be.
Well, unless you
Everyone
have
gets a bit
parents who
tribal.
also
Like,
enforce
yeah,
like
yeah,
horrific
that's it,
views.
yeah.
Can we also contrast it, going away from Tick's son's view on things and the outlook that he has, can we contrast it to Tick's view? Because throughout all of this time on this journey, he's been anxious, he's been really worried about the prospect of meeting his son that may shun him. But when he actually comes to and sees that his son is, as we've mentioned, very progressive about the fact that he's a cross-dressing performer, and turns out to be gay, he kind of has a epiphany, a bit of a realization, like, oh no, like there is actually good in the world. I'm glad that my son can grow up to be this person that is accepting. The whole idea of acceptance.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
what we get from
and then
this.
you also get that very interesting passage in the hotel room after the attack, which then ends up with, now you've been fucked, from
yes.
where do you think that we're the cities where to keep us in or to keep them out, and suburbia's this wall that
That's
just
one of my
surrounds
favourite,
it?
like, yeah.
Very powerful, yeah.
That's the thing. They've gone into this world, the outside world where they're not, and then they've come out at the other side of it with the purest version of acceptance.
So yeah.
Particularly after what you've just seen as well,
Yeah.
it drives the point home.
And then you've got the whole thing with ABBA, where
lot of
Bernadette
ABBA.
hates ABBA.
She's like, fucking ABBA.
yeah.
Yeah, well, Bernadette, what does she listen to?
And then
you know
what do
I
they
mean?
do as they're leaving? Bang on the ABBA.
Yeah.
Right, there's one thing I do want to explore just before we wrap up, which is Bob.
Bill Hunter.
Bill Hunter,
Bill
Right?
Hunter.
part
man.
of what I'd call the heart of this film, I'd say, is
Right,
the relationship
yeah.
between him and Bernadette.
Yeah, well, elaborate on Bob.
Well, Bob, they just meet him. Where did they meet him? They meet him at a bar or somewhere.
He's got an Asian ping pong
Yeah,
wife.
Yeah,
and I love the fact
very frivolous things with the ping pong balls.
that's one of my favourite things about this film.
Well, just to get graphics, she shoots a ping pong out of her fanny.
But he doesn't even tell them that at first. He makes it out like she's an alcoholic and she
gets
can't be
very
let
drunk.
around. Yeah.
And I love the fact that she's like fiending for the cupboard and it's locked with shades, and she opens it and just ping pong balls come out, and you're like, what?
But up until that point, you're like, oh, is she like, is there booze in there? Is he locked her out? Because she's sweating and shit, like withdrawing.
It's the ping pong balls.
You know, that's probably, one of my favourite. And then after that, he's like, yeah, no, fuck this, man. I've got to get out of it.
Well, he's such a gentleman in the film, and obviously
The flowers,
knocking on the door, actually, again, being accepting, calling them ladies rather than boys.
Oh, he does the correction, which is like the thing that is what like modern today is. If you get pronouns wrong, the ability to correct yourself immediately after is what is important.
Yeah.
It's not about getting it wrong. It's about being able to correct yourself.
You know what I'm saying?
And he does do that straight away. And then you've also got the fact that there's the scene where they stay out all night getting drunk. Not that they've had sex, they've just laid there together out by the stars.
It's so romantic, mate.
And Bernadette's got a face in cake. So, but they play it off with the whole, guess who didn't come back to bed
Yeah, I
last
like
night?
that.
Yeah. And Bob, they eventually, obviously, he's like, no, I'm going to stay.
Yeah.
Well, she found herself a real man because at the start of this film, her lover dies, but you get the impression you get that he was like a toy boy, like a younger kid who probably owed it or something.
And a fetish.
Yeah,
It was more of a fetish than an actual acceptance or love for.
exactly. Whereas now
Bernadette.
she's gone and found like. Not in terms of the toxic, like gruff way.
A gentleman.
Like, gentleman. He's strong in his
He's also
beliefs.
capable. He knows how to repair a truck.
Do you know what I'm saying?
He's very traditional in that sense, but then he's very not.
Yes, yeah.
Jack of all trades, He's a jack of all trades. I hope it's implied they ended up together.
Yeah, she
that's
found
it.
herself a good man, bro.
Well, it's the bit where knocks on the hotel door and goes, "I saved your flowers before they got ruined," and just locks eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cut. We don't need to go any further. That is for your interpretation. And then at the end, for him and her to kind of stand there together. That's it. And then the ultimate fuck you from Felicia Adam is to start playing ABBA into the sunset.
Bye, Ralph.
Right, all I wanted to say, there's that. All I wanted to say, is that if it's Mamma Mia or some fucking Kylie Minogue track, let me tell you, when we showed it at the Cine Club the other day, bro, I didn't realise how heavy the drum sound was on Mamma Mia, bro.
Well,
Bro, the production
ABBA
on that.
works way better because ABBA has always been like champion or been. It's the kind of whole. It feels like a stereotype, but it's not. Like Madonna is to gay men.
Yeah.
The same is with Barbara Streisand.
Streisand. They do make a mistake.
The joke that every gay man has a copy of Barbara. Every gay man who's probably in his 40s, 50s has a copy of Barbara, the
Streisand,
essential Barbara Streisand. Then you go round to Roy and Paul's house, my mum's friends, and they do.
Roy and Paul!
and you're like, right, so it's not really just a joke, it's true, right?
No, it's a thing.
And ABBA's got to be the same because it's that disco. It's the time where there's kind of
Heavily camp.
The culture towards gay people is just beginning to
One thing I
grow
will
and
say
come
though,
out.
they do get it's sort of a mistake with ABBA because Adam Guy Pearce says that he broke into Agnetta's dressing room. ABBA toured Australia once in 1977, and you know how I know this? Because they released it as a film. And then the soundtrack album is where you have like Eagle and that. He must have been 5 when he
But
stuck
can you
into...
believe everything that Adam Felicia says? The catty, lying,
That's true.
twister.
That's true.
Yeah.
He definitely was, because I know Wikipedia, bro, and that didn't happen.
And you get this as your climax. They get there in their costumes, which I find, I was saying to Jason again, I just turned to him, wouldn't it have been hilarious to get these drag costumes to just walk through the wilderness and just shoot this scene?
So apparently they wanted Uluru, Ayers Rock, but the indigenous or the people in charge of it said it would conflict with the indigenous population's beliefs. But I think they're quite precious about any kind of film work over there.
In general, yeah. And then to cut to just the sunset instead of showing any kind of... Yeah, I feel like that's fine, though. It also doesn't date it or almost makes it almost their own journey. It's not too specific,
Exactly.
It's just it doesn't end, it goes on forever.
I do love that moment though where they get there and it's like, now what? Well, we go home.
I want to go home.
We've done it, man. Yeah.
Accomplished it. Okay, now.
So I'm good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's been an absolute pleasure talking about this film. I love it. I saw it in the West End. Like, my mum took me when I was 18, and it was awesome to see. They dial up the lip syncing. That's the one thing. But yeah, I love this movie, and I'm really glad we put it on.
It was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I always recommend it to people, and they're always surprised because you just kind of look at the cover and go, oh. You know, it's kind of the. And then when you got this kind of. Also, I find that like a lot of our RuPaul's very kind of too catty for me. I find drag very entertaining, but I find Drag Race is just almost quite malicious when I watch it.
It started off.
It's very kind of bullying. There's kind of this kind of, and I get that's kind of the animosity. You know, the same with the comic scene where they all kind of haze each other into it. But for me, this is a lot more kind of tasteful representation.
Drag Race started off as being actually fairly wholesome and representative, and I think they dialed it up for ratings. Because I do remember seeing Drag Race about 9-10 years ago and thinking, this is kind of wholesome, bro. And then you see it out, it's like, okay, your ratings are suffering and you want me to watch.
Yeah, it's like that kind of shit you get like Beverly Hills
or Britain's Next Top Model, America's Next Top Model,
horrible fucking human beings. And to be perfectly honest, I think people who watch those shows will ultimately kind of almost feed into it. I bet they're the kind of shit stereotypes.
Mum, we're talking about you. You need to stop watching that Orange County shit, right? Stop it.
We're talking about my mum as well. Sorry,
I can think of a couple other people as well. But anyway, as it was, absolute pleasure. Toby, Alex,
as
really
always,
guys. Join me. Serial viewers yet again. We'd just like to thank everyone at the Cine Soho Club for showing this masterpiece. And we'll be eventually getting, we've talked about I Love You, Philip Morris, but you will be getting to see it. So do stop at the spoiler warning so you can watch the film and then get the full notes at the end. But we'd also like to thank Blaze and Kenny again, Emma with the Cine Soho Club, Micaiah, who's also just running around doing amazing stuff for us, and everyone at All Is Joy for providing us with this awesome space. Thank you.
Thank you.
And take care.